Hello, fellow learners. Today we are going to review a concept we learned in class and introduce you to another concept that is related to the one we've already covered. And it will assist you in working on the assignment that goes with this. Now, if you follow along, go back, do the steps that I'm giving you, you'll have no problem completing the assignment to show me that you indeed do know how to do this. Now, if you happen to get home, say, oh, I forgot this, you could click on assignment right here, and you will find this assignment all laid out for you very nicely in the order that these cases come in. And there's 3 of them that you're going to need to work on. So we'll touch base on those in just a second. All right, moving on. Before we get into the idea and the objective of this lesson on being able to differentiate between a statutory and a case law, the first thing I want to talk about with you guys is that you're going to refresh my memory. And how I want you to refresh my memory is to talk to me about what exactly is a statutory law. Now, on the assignment that I have set out for you and have given you access to, the first 2 questions you're going to be asked on this is, if I can get to the top, define statutory law and define case law. This is where that part is going to come in. So as I'm doing this, if you can remember exactly what statutory law is, by all means, go for it and fill that in. Now, just a little reminder, when we talk about the 3 branches of government, statutory law involves 2 branches, case law involves 1. And so we're going to move on from that. So when you're done giving me that refresher of what is statutory law, it's going to make things a little bit easier as we start talking about case law. Now, there's a couple of important things to know about case law. The first thing you need to know about it is that a case law comes out of a court ruling. Okay, so judges don't get to just pick that they like or dislike a law. There has to be a case that's brought forward to them. There has to be a controversy between 2 parties. Oftentimes it is the government, because the government makes the laws, and a person who violates, but it doesn't always need to, because we deal with both criminal and civil law. Criminal law is always going to involve the government because they've created the law that we follow and somebody hasn't. Civil, again, is that dispute between 2 individual persons. Court's going to hear both sides, as they would in any case, and they will determine if the law that's being challenged is constitutional or not. They may set a standard for future cases. Regardless of what and how in-depth the decision is, the decision itself has the force of law. And that is what case law is, laws that are created out of a case. So let's do an easy one together. I think this is a great case, the Terry versus Ohio case. I have added 3 sources. I'm going to ask that you pause this and go through those 3 sources. Shouldn't take you very long, so I'm going to give you a let's pause. I'll come back in about a couple of minutes, and then we'll answer some of the questions. All right, welcome back. So in looking at Terry versus Ohio, and in looking at the 3 cases I'm going to have you work on outside of class, you're going to see some common tasks here. In all of them, they're going to ask the city and the state of the incident. When did this take place? Where did it take place? So as far as we know, in the Terry versus Ohio case, it took place in Cleveland, Ohio. What was taking place at this location? Well, we have Officer McFadden. We should have gotten out of our reading in our video, was just patrolling, and he happens to see a couple of men standing on a street corner. They're talking to each other. One looks towards a store. Another man comes. He runs. And based on Officer McFadden's experience, he has an idea that they are casing this place to rob the place. So what does Officer McFadden do? He goes and he approaches the three men in an alley, and he tells all three of them to put their faces to the wall, hands on the wall. And he simply goes and does a pat frisk. He taps the outside of all of their clothes, and in two of them, they were carrying loaded handguns. And so Terry is arrested, and he is sentenced. And he continually argues, and his whole case revolved around the idea that he had Fourth Amendment protections, and that Officer McFadden's touching and frisking his clothes actually violated Terry's Fourth Amendment protection against unlawful searches and seizures. The case goes to the Supreme Court, and they rule in favor of Ohio, Officer McFadden. And they said that it is a police officer's responsibility to maintain a safe community. And he has the responsibility of protecting all people, regardless of where they are or who they may come in contact with. And so the Supreme Court says, and this becomes the case law, is that police are allowed to pat frisk individuals they find suspicious, and that is not a violation of anyone's constitutional rights. So we had an incident. It did deal with the criminal action. It was a Fourth Amendment case. Terry ends up losing, and the Supreme Court's case law that is still in effect is that police can stop and frisk someone that they feel suspicious of. Now, looking at this, what is the statutory law in question that caused Terry to be arrested? We could go on a couple of routes on this one. The law that the government has made is that you can't rob a place, and that's what Officer McFadden thought they were doing. And secondly, he did not have permission to be carrying that gun. So that became the second statutory question. What is the case law that was established that police have the ability to pat frisk suspects they find suspicious? So we've got a law here that was written by the state of Ohio, and now we have a law that's in place that was created by the Supreme Court. So you're going to be looking at one case called Texas versus Johnson. And in that, you're going to have a chance to hear or watch a video called Supreme Court Briefs, a little play on the tighty-whities there. Another video, if you choose to watch it, about the issue of flag burning. And then each case that you're going to be looking at will have an OEA site which will provide you verbal explanation of what came out of this case. And then each one has the opportunity, if you're still struggling to understand the case or what you're trying to write down, I have provided a short podcast for each of the cases I'm asking you to do. So in addition to this, and I will have everything listed for Texas as well, the other case is Mapp versus Ohio and Miranda versus Arizona, and I have linked for you the main sources you will need to complete this assignment. So going back now to the assignment itself, we're going to cross our fingers that this works. Texas versus Johnson is the first case, And so I have set this up with you so that you just go through and you fill in the blanks. You're going to do a small, basically a T-chart. What was the statutory law in Texas? And what was the case law that came out of that? The second case you're going to work on is Mapp versus Ohio. Again, everything is laid out here for you. You have the ability to watch a video, read a verbal overview of the case, listen to a podcast to gain this information. And the third case is another criminal case, is Miranda versus Arizona. This one will be interesting to you, and won't take you long to figure out how, and the case law that comes out of this case, or this particular case, actually affects every one of us. So that will be the assignment. Once you're finished with all those, I want you to go to the last page, which is talking about who is responsible to create these, who's required to follow, who is responsible to create case law, who is required to follow. And then the final section is your personal reflection of this. What was the most challenging task in this assessment? What could be done to improve that task? What part of the lesson was easiest for you to understand? Why do you think that is the case? And what would you like me to do to assist you in understanding the difference between a statutory and a case law? I read them all, and so I will take these all into consideration. As you see that I had provided all that information of where to look, the Texas versus Johnson cases are actually, these are all linked. So they're linked inside this particular presentation. And for the other two cases, they are there for you as well. If you have any questions, by all means, talk to me. You have 3 days to complete this assignment. And if you have questions, day 1 and 2 are the best days to come to me with questions. And I will do my very best to help you fill in that assessment and understand, back to our target goal, the ability to differentiate between what is a statutory law and a case law. Thanks for learning with me. Talk to me if you have questions.